Hello, this is Sondra Oster, Baras, bringing you a few words of Bible from the heart of Biblical Israel. This week's Torah portion is Miketz, and we're well into the story of Joseph in Egypt on the one hand, and the brothers in Canaan on the other, and the meeting between the two of them. Things are getting very, very dramatic right now. And how does this all happen? Of course, in chapter 42, we find out that there is a terrible famine, okay? And the famine has hit Canaan. And so Jacob turns to his sons and he says to them, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and purchase for us from there. Bring us, grain, so that we may live and not die. And the brothers of Joseph went down, all 10 of them, to purchase grain in Egypt. Now, this, of course, is just part of the story, okay? And we've read the story already. We know how it ends, but it's part of the story. But it's a lot more than just part of the story, because it is with this particular singular action that begins the enslavement of the children of Israel in Egypt. We will recall back in Lech Lecha, in one of the earlier chapters in Genesis, chapter 15, there is one of a number of covenants that God enters in with Abraham. This is the covenant of the pieces. And at that point, God says to Abraham as follows: Know well that your children will be strangers in a land not theirs, and they shall be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I will execute judgment on the nation they shall serve, and in the end they shall go free with great wealth. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a ripe old age, and they shall return here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites will not yet be complete before them. Very clear. And here's Abraham. He's just arrived in the land of Canaan. He is in the process of turning the land of Canaan into his new home, into his new birthplace, into his land. Okay? And then he discovers that even though, there will be a few generations that will be in the land, that will not be long-lived, because the nation will go down to, the family, will go down to some country, it doesn't say which one, where they will be enslaved for 400 years. Now, this 400 years is an interesting number, because in the way Jewish tradition has analyzed the different dates and who died when, and basically you take Levi, and you know more about Levi than anybody else, because you have the generations from Levi to Moses written out, and you know how old some of them were when they died. And making a calculation like that, you get to the fact that the actual enslavement in Egypt was 210 years, not 400 years. And what is the 400 years? People count that from different places. One of the theories that it's actually counted from the birth of Isaac, because already with the birth of Isaac himself, he doesn't leave the land of Israel, of course, but he has to go, travel a bit. But, with Isaac begins the story. I don't know. You can view this any way you like, but it is important to recall this number 210, because even if it is not an accurate number, it becomes a very important number in Jewish tradition in how we view the slavery. And it's particularly significant here, because the word for go down that we find in verse 2 is a 3-letter word called, it is ridu. And in Hebrew, every letter has a numerical value. And the numerical value of these 3 letters end up being 210. Okay? And so we have commentators that say in Jacob telling his sons, go down there, to get food, that going down is a far more significant command than just go buy us some food. And I think whether or not you accept this idea of the 210 and the miracle value, it doesn't matter, because what this all goes to tell us is that from a practical matter, this is when the descent to Egypt really begins, okay? Now we learn it takes quite some time until they're actually enslaved, okay? Because throughout Joseph's lifetime, everything's good, then the kings change, and it takes a while. It's a process before the children of Israel go from living a calm and peaceful life in Goshen and in Egypt to being enslaved. But it does begin here. Okay, definitely, because here's this where they first go down, and of course they end up settling in Egypt. As a result of this famine, they go and they settle in Egypt. Now, I've always asked myself, if Jacob, my answer is yes, I really and truly believe that Jacob had a real consciousness of the significance of what was happening, because he must have known about this covenant with Abraham. These words, you should know your children will be enslaved and oppressed in a nation not their own for 400 years. This must have been passed down. And even as, I wonder, for example, Isaac, when he, there's a famine in the land of Israel during his time, and he's going south, and God says, no, don't go to Egypt. You stay here and you go to Gerar instead. If there isn't some feeling in Isaac, maybe, this is the famine that begins the whole thing, but it doesn't, okay? And then Jacob, of course, when he's forced to flee and to go to Haran, I wonder if he says, maybe this is how it all begins. But then, of course, God appears to him after he's already established his family. He says, no, go back to your land. And they say, oh, okay, it's not now. But here, and here he's sending them to go down to Egypt against the background of an enormous family crisis. Joseph is gone. The brothers know that they are guilty of this. Jacob doesn't know, but he's terribly at ease. He cannot be comforted. He knows something's wrong. He doesn't know what happened to Joseph. He may think that he's dead, but he's not sure. Which is why, of course, he refuses to be comforted, because he really doesn't know. And they say also, when you heard somebody is missing in action or whatever, you don't know. There's no way you can close that wound because you don't have a body. You aren't burying anybody. There's always that doubt. Maybe he's still alive, and that leaves you with no comfort at all, because you cannot reach closure. So this is the situation of the family of Jacob. They're an absolute mess. The children are a mess. They're guilty. They know that this is something, and they feel guilty because they say it as soon as things go wrong in Egypt. They immediately say, it's our fault. We should have listened to Joseph as he was pleading for us. So there's a certain, I don't know, this word is so pregnant with meaning, go down, that Jacob knows or has some sense that as he's sending them down, he's sending them into what will become a terrible time, but will then also become the birth of the nation of Israel. And that, of course, that is what happens in the whole story. If you look at the story of the struggles between Joseph and his brothers and eventually coming to unity, there's so much there that is about what is the nation of Israel. Will there be struggles? Of course, there will always be problems, but we hope never again to get to a situation of one brother selling another, civil war. There were times when there was incidents of civil war in the biblical periods, but these were all terrible, terrible things. And here we just have a sense that everything is happening is part of this prophecy of this covenant that will eventually bring the nation out as a nation and bring them to the land of Israel. Have a wonderful weekend. Shabbat Shalom.
I hope you enjoyed that film. And we have lots more film content and emails and articles that I'm sure you will enjoy as well. Check out our website at CFOIC.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can do that right from the homepage. I know you will really enjoy the content that will land in your inbox on a regular basis. Hope to see you soon.